All right. Well, welcome everybody to our October Arcadia Books book club discussion of the Manningtree Witches by A.K. Blakemore. So we chose this book just because it's gotten such rave reviews for its the author's prose. I mean, I believe you can tell she's a poet by the way that she writes, and also because we thought it'd be fun to do something witchy for the month of October, for the Halloween season. So. Well, what'd you think? Nope, nobody was into it.
I was underwhelmed.
Okay.
I thought there were good parts in it. She's definitely a talented writer, but it did make me wonder why the former president keeps talking about everything as a witch hunt, because it was a really chilling portrayal of actual witch hunts. And I gather it was historically accurate. I knew nothing about the English witches. I know about our Salem witches here. But once the sentences were taken out on the witches, it really, I was kind of into it till that point, but then I thought the last part of the book after that was kind of anticlimactic. I was hoping something else more would happen than it did.
Okay, so I did some research just because I love historical fiction, so I wanted to see how much of this was based in fact, and it really was. Matthew Hopkins, Rebecca West, John Eads, John Stern were all real people. Matthew Hopkins, they believe he was only 25 to 28 years old when this happened.
That's
they make it like apparently there had been a Vincent Price movie about this.
That's right.
So he was kind of a craggy old man, but this was a young man. Hopkins and Stern sent over 100 people to the gallows between 1645 and 1646. 100 people in a year to 2 years' time.
So isn't that way more than the Salem witches?
Oh yeah, that was like 19, I believe. More than all of the witch hunters, the witch hunters in England in the previous 160 years. Hopkins really did own the Thorn Inn in Missley, and he retired when the church and the government turned on him in about 1647. So here's what's chilling to me. So he retired in 1647. The Salem witch trials were 1692 to 93. Now it's like 45 years later, and it just repeated itself again. So I think that's kind of, I mean, we don't know how long Rebecca West or Rebecca Waters lived, but she's sailing right into it, escaped, heading right for it again. So she may not have been alive still by the time the Salem witch trials happened. But
Nancy, did your research say whether these Manningtree witch trials influenced the Salem witch trials? That seems surprising that it was 50 years later. I would have thought it was like the same time period as part of a worldwide phenomena.
Right. No, we didn't learn our lesson apparently.
Well, and there's something that I'm sorry. I didn't want to. I know.
No, go ahead.
I'll tell you the reason I saw this in your newsletter, and it was especially grabbing to me. I have not finished the book yet. I've only gotten into about the first 100 pages. But my 9th grade grandmother was hung as a witch. She lived in the suburb of Liverpool, and King James I, who was a nutcase, and there was so much religious persecution over there that all these Puritans were getting on boats and going to America. So she came to America in 1641 or 2. So she was maybe 20, 21 years old with her husband, and they were in the Dorchester colony of Boston. And around 1649 or 50, no one's been able to exactly pinpoint it. Her youngest child died right after birth, and she was bereft. And she told her friend she saw the image of a ghost rising that, was a baby. And so, of course, the elders of the community said, "Oh no, the devil's trying to get to us through your dead baby." So they put her on trial as a witch, and she denied being a witch. And they said, "Well, why don't you just say you dreamt it?" And she said she felt she wanted to be punished because she had gotten pregnant before she got married, and she'd committed a sin, and she felt that she had to take her punishment. So they hung her in somewhere around 1650, 30 years old. Her husband ran away, and the kids were farmed out to other people in the community. And I followed them through Ancestry, and one of them ended up, like several generations down, ended up being Lizzie Borden. But the paranoia of that, the reason they left, they just said King James is nuts. And Charles I after him wasn't a whole lot better either. I mean, it seems like what I'm getting and what I started getting in this book is all the guilt that seems pushed on these women, like we deserve this. And it just enrages me, but I love the style of the writing. And I really have enjoyed it. I'm really into it, but I'm working full time, and I just have not been able to finish it yet. I will finish
Well,
it.
Kathy, I think we now know why we cannot see you. There's some witchcraft going on that is preventing us from seeing you.
I
And
even combed my hair.
My other comment is, well, it's good in 2022 how we would never treat women like that or take away any of their rights after 50 years.
Yeah,
Because
right.
that was the one thing I was seeing parallels between the way they were treating women then and the way women are being treated now.
I also read that one of the guys he worked with the big witch hunter, the Matthew Hopkins or whatever. His wife actually was accused of being a witch too. And she was the same thing. She took the hanging because she felt guilty because she'd been a little bit of a hot mama at one point in her life, and it wasn't right. And she thought it was a punishment that she deserved. And they just see this thing falling, going, oh, it's unbelievable. But it's fascinating.
Well, I think it was also such an economic and war-torn time that people were looking for scapegoats. So if you had any kind of, special characteristics, being extra, a lot of personality, or you were good with herbs and could heal people, you were up there at the top of the list, it seems like. And some of the other books that I've read, read about this. So yeah, it took me a while, kind of back to you, Larry, to kind of get into it. And then I had to give myself a talking to, hey, after that Penelope Fitzgerald book, you just got to get into the age. You just got to get into the talk, And so I started looking up some of the words that I had no idea what they were. And that kind of triggered something. And so I do find myself in a Kelter heap every once in a while. So there you go.
What was that expression, and what were some of the words you learned?
Well, I marked them because I found them so interesting. There was one where they described a man's face, and it looked like collops. Collops. What could a collop be? Well, it's a rasher of bacon. So it's like, okay, I know what this guy looks like. And then there was another word. It started with a P, and I had never, ever seen it before. Maybe I can find it. But it was another name for bats. And it was just like, oh, okay. So now some of this stuff, it started to make some sense. But the Kelter heap, I think, was when the women were in the prison and they were accusing each other and they were saying, oh, we're just in the Kelter heap. So I I had to make myself kind of get into oldie English.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
slattern.
I had the
Slattern.
same problem with getting into the reading. So I went to an audiobook, which I
Oh.
love because the language, it was just really, the reader was really great.
Oh, that's good. That's a good idea.
Yeah,
Oh.
Yeah, I really did. And then I went back and I still had the book and kind of went back and reread little passages and things like that. But the audiobook was great. It was
Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't get into it. I just, I thought her writing was interesting, her writing style, but I just found it so depressing. Just the descriptions of the time period and the poverty and the way they lived, and I just found it really, really depressing. And I think, and part of it's me. Part of it is, I'm so enraged by the ultra religious stuff going on right now, kind of against women and against anybody who's an other. And I think it's true. People, when they're frightened and insecure, they're always looking for an other. And, there's a rise of anti-Semitism now, and there's a lot of misogyny right now. And there's just all these things going on. And I just couldn't deal with it. So I got into the beginning, and then, don't tell James I said this, but I skipped to the end and read, because he hates that, and read like the last 2 chapters just to see kind of what happened to her. So that was kind of interesting. And maybe I'll go back to it at some point, but part of it was just me personally, because I've got all this other stuff going on right now. And part of it was just that I'm depressed enough right now with everything going on in the world. And this just was like piling it on, I just found it so depressing.
Yeah, like Kathy, I'm about 2/3 of the way through the book. But like you, Diane, I think it's just feeding into the anger that I feel already.
Mhm.
And look at these women who are now, they're awaiting their fate is where I'm at. But they're all single women. Maybe there's a married, but they're single widowed women, unless more happen later in the story. And who is holding their fate? White, educated, I don't know if I'd say that, but with some white men, and I'm looking at what's going on right now, and it's the same thing. And so it really is, it's kind of feeding into my dark mood where I'm
feeding into the rage.
Yes.
And I'm just kind of pissed off about everything. I'm going to take a little bit different tangent here, because one thing I thought, it's got to be just me, but on page 165, it talks about how, the village people, they like to see someone get hung, and they're going to, where does it, her skirts soaking with piss and throats blood froth on a sackcloth. So today I'm listening to Wisconsin Public Radio, and they're talking about Jeffrey Dahmer and the show that's on Netflix, I think, about him. And different people had different opinions on it. And I've not watched that. I'm not going to watch that miniseries on Netflix, where it is, but it just seemed so akin to what people do with hanging witches. They just want to gloat on the horrendous thing.
People used to take picnics to lynchings.
Yes, yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I don't think it was until this new lynching museum, I forget the name of it, but the guy who's freed a lot of death row people, I want to say it's in Alabama. And I didn't realize that people not only enjoyed going to lynchings, but there were postcards. They'd send a postcard saying, "Hey, Bonnie, wish you were here at the lynching with me. It was a great time."
God.
And people would collect the postcards.
Oh,
I
So
know
I
the,
don't- yeah,
yeah, I know the museum you're speaking of, and I cannot remember, but yeah, where they have, pictures or something hanging down. I've seen
Yeah.
pictures of it.
I want to
Yeah.
say his last name is Stevenson. But right where you were quoting from, Bonnie, on 164, Hopkins says, it says he needs make no answer more than this look, because he knows already what most women come to learn: the men will not save you. And I kept thinking maybe the guy, well, here's the question. Did the guy rape her, or she kind of, I wasn't clear whether it was outright rape or what, but he was really despicable in that he could have helped her. And then Hopkins uses him to testify, and that was chilling. But I do, one of my favorite descriptions of Hopkins, this is early on in page 31, I think he looks like nothing has ever brought him joy in his life. And I thought that captured all the witch hunters. They had no joy, they were miserable, and somehow persecuting and killing these women was what brought them fulfillment. And I kept thinking, well, somebody's going to rise up to stop it, and it never did.
Maybe they were the equivalent of today's incels.
Yeah.
You know, just the hatred of women, and you know, this bizarre sense of God complex and self-righteousness.
Oh, the book is making me think of the whole QAnon stuff. Are believing that, you know, some people are eating just all that craziness and the crazy ideas, you know, that someone is flying in the air, or you're just
that people are killing children and drinking their blood to get some kind of adrenaline, what's it called, adrenaline
Like
drug or something from these children that they're drinking the blood
rush.
from. I mean, it's just it's insane, but people believe it.
I think
Yeah.
people are afraid they speak up against it, that then they'll be accused too. I think, you know, back then and today too, I think it's the same thing. People have that issue.
and I think it was the same way, even, you know, you were talking about the Salem witch trials, which were 25 years after my 9th grade grandmother was hung, right? So the guy who put her on trail was Richard Mather, who happened to be the great grandfather of Cotton Mather, who did the Salem witch trials. So that's like a whole family of men, generations, that chose to go through and weed all these people out of the community for whatever reason. It's just stunning to me that, and there was nothing that the women couldn't even stand up, because if they did, you know, they'd be the next ones hanging from the tree. It's
the women had absolutely no power.
no, that's right.
So
I mean, it is, a lot of it is depressing, but I sort of found a lot of humor in the Rebecca character when she would describe things. Like, this is my favorite passage in the whole book. It says, just like a man, my mother would have said to that, just like a man to suggest the most obvious thing in the world as though it might be a revelation to a woman's cottony mind, when it seems to me all the most obvious things in the world must be done by women, or else they wouldn't get done. And she was just, and she had like a little, that was my favorite thing. And I really felt that, because frankly, I don't think they would have been able to, like, you know, accuse the women if the women hadn't been in on it. I think because it seems like they made the women testify against each other, which is really kind of crazy. But I don't want to spoil the end for everybody, but I felt that Rebecca got the upper hand on the men. I mean, you know, in the end. And I really do think she was going off to America, that she is a witch and she came here. And I wondered about if she was in the Salem witch trials too, because it just seemed to be the way it was going. But yeah.
Well, Lori, I was going to say, I agree with you. There was some good humor in it, but I felt like there wasn't enough. And I am going to go ahead and spoil the ending because that was one of the questions I had. Hopkins is dying of consumption, and she decides to accelerate the process and kill him with a pillow. And I don't know. I was glad she finally got away, but I couldn't totally get behind murdering the guy who was going to die in a short time. And then she's reunited with the girl who set the whole thing off by making up the fake story. And I couldn't believe she totally reconciled with her and was like, oh, I wish I would have done that. But I didn't think, Lori, that she was really a witch. There was no question that she wasn't. Because, I mean, that's the other thing. If they were witches, they could have put spells on the men or gotten out of there or something. It was just so ludicrous.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Nancy, I want to hear your opinion on the book. You just told us the research. What did you think?
Well, okay. So when I was getting ready for book club a couple days ago, I was reading one article. I was reading an interview with the author. And I just glanced off to the side of my screen, and it has like 4 other stories headlines. And one headline was about a 16-year-old girl in Iran who had been beaten to death because the morality police or whoever went into her school, and these girls would not sing some song of allegiance to the regime. And I thought, well, damn, the more things change, the more they stay the same, right? And so I think I am sure a lot of these things that we've been talking about were in the author's mind as she's writing this book. You know, the sins of most of these women was that they were widows, and so they had little income, they had no power, they had no one to protect them. And it's, you know, it's just kind of the same, where the weak, the poor are always the scapegoats. And if you have enough money, you can buy your way out of things, or, you know, so it's and I thought it was also ironic during this period of a civil war, there were just a bunch of more widows to be made, more orphans to be made.
Yep.
And, you know, and just the way they, you know, I guess when you're that desperate, you know, blaming the kid falling out of the tub and getting a traumatic brain injury, you know, he's been whipped. You know, the rabbits, a rabbit pausing in your doorway is a, you know, is a
sign of the devil.
Right, what they call the little animals. I can't remember what their little toadies were.
Yep.
Wasn't it imps? Weren't they imps?
They're imps. Yes.
Oh, wait.
I have a whole bunch of imps at my house. I mean,
Yeah.
they do my business for me sometimes, but usually I'm the one, you know, cleaning up after them. But,
Oh.
and I think so often, oh my God, I never would have made it. I would have been strung up right quick because
Maybe you were.
Oh,
because if the
scary thought.
calling out a kid for being a brat, I would have been in trouble.
Yeah, me too.
So Nancy, you thought the book was nonfiction and that's why you liked it.
Well, unfortunately, it does feel like it's all nonfiction, you know, and just as, here we go again.
To your point, Nancy, about the young woman in Iran, we read a book in my old book club probably 20 years ago, about a young woman, and I don't remember if it was Saudi Arabia or where it was, but she was raped, gang raped by her brother and his friends, got pregnant, and after giving birth, she was stoned to death because she was blamed for the fact that they raped her. And this is current day. This is not 500 years ago or 400 years ago. But I wanted to bring up another book that I read, and it was also a Masterpiece Theater thing, called Precious Bane. I don't know if anybody's ever read this one.
No.
It deals with a lot of the same things, and I remember reading in this one that if you were a witch, they would throw you in the water in the lake, and if you floated, you were a witch, and then were burnt or whatever, hanged. But if you sunk, then you were not a witch. But of course, you drowned.
I remember hearing those stories. Yeah.
I believe that was in
Damned if you do,
Monty
damned if you don't.
Python's Life of Brian. They kept accusing people of being witches and throwing them in. I mean,
Yeah.
they
And that was
tried
in
to.
this too, but
Yeah,
this is a really good book, and I don't remember it being quite as depressing. But it's about
Diane,
kind of the same
look at
time
the
period.
cover, though. No, look at that woman's head. She looks like so melancholy.
Kind of like leaning her
Having a
head
bad
over.
day.
And that's who it's by. It's by Mary Webb.
I don't know. She looks like Linda Blair in The Exorcist. The way her neck is being bent out of proportion.
Oh
Leaning her head
God.
over.
Used the drowning
But it's a
test.
really beautiful book too. What?
Matthew Hopkins used the drowning test, the witch finder. And the rationale is if they were witches, they would swim because they were rejecting the waters of baptism. So they'd try to get it.
Oh.
They would drown.
Just a little side note, folks. I recently saw on Facebook people that I graduated with in northern Wisconsin. The first of the month, a number of them say the first words they're supposed to say the first day of each month is rabbit, rabbit, to bring good luck. Now, isn't that kind of interesting? Because look at how much rabbit gets brought up in the book, and the rabbit is in the doorway. I wonder, it's like their family tradition, but like, where did that come from? Sounds kind of witchery to me.
Mhm.
So
One.
Bonnie, you went to school with a coven? Is that what you're telling us?
Mm.
Yeah.
I-
No,
No, go ahead. No, I was going to say, I was doing some research too. This is my problem every time I go to read a book too, because I get on a side jag and I want to know where is that place? And, and I meet him, I'm all over looking things up. And one of the things I noticed was what a fundraising thing it was for these guys who were the witch hunters. And Nancy, I think you were like saying the same thing, that people were paying them good money to just get as many people hung and get all these evil people, these witches, cleared out of the neighborhood. And I'm not even sure how much of it they did because they really liked what they were doing or because they just wanted to get paid a lot. I wonder about that too. But like you, I feel like it was nonfiction compared to, based on what I've read, it seems pretty true to what was going on. And it all started, even back when you think of Guy Fawkes Day, and because of all the religious persecution and even going back to Henry VIII, and it's just burning people at the stake, and it's crazy. It really is. But there were people fighting against it. They were going to blow up the whole parliament and everybody in it, but it didn't happen. So
It's where do people get to the point where they finally stand up and say enough? And I think we could use that answer today.
good question.
But, for this, it was some of the ministers started to, and some people in the government started to question, like, they actually said, well, maybe you're the witch, you're the evil one. And then that's when he stopped.
Yeah.
And then they didn't prosecute him. McCarthy, just crazier and crazier until
Have you no shame?
with no shame, just kept adding on until apparently it was Eisenhower that helped put an end to that when he started making accusations about the army. Where do people get to the point where they can't turn a blind eye anymore, and then they stand up? And where is that point going to be in Iran? It's and the same with Ukraine. We're thousands of miles away. We're across an ocean. It's easy to go on with your own life. Well, torture and war is happening, to our fellow human beings. So it's just, I don't know, that it's that just the human nature is that you just keep your head down and everything's okay in my world. As long as I don't make waves, it'll be fine. Or I don't know. I have no answer for that. So.
Well, there's a little bit of a, paragraph that maybe she tries to help us understand. It's on 132, and it seemed like all the women that were listed, they were all women who helped in their community. They took care of the woman after her baby died, who had taken the baby to nurse and had laid a hand on it and called it a pretty child and touched the cheek. And which answers he received: West, Moon, Godwin, Clark, and Leach. I mean, all these women took care of families in the community and didn't stand up for them, not even ever once, not even tried to, but they depended on them like crazy when times were tough for them. That makes me think, well, now I am the beneficiary of a lot of good things, and I'm hoping that I would stand up, that I'm doing something to make sure that this doesn't, happen again. So it's like we need some accountability as good folks to do something, for the greater good, and not feel like we're getting singled out. There were a lot of good lessons, in the book. Yeah. The part of the book when they were in the prison for a year without a bath. Yeah, that was kind of tough to kind of read through all of that. And I think her mom tells her at one point, well, if the devil is that bad and he's really nice to the old widow, maybe we should start worshiping the devil. So, it's it was a good book, hard to read and to get through, but I think there were some good lessons in it.
Well, and I do. Oh,
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, no, I noticed that they were saying that back in the day, these guys would starve women that they were going to accuse of being witches, and they'd just put them on the verge of death. So they'd say or do anything. And again, that's how they built their numbers up. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, to your point, I mean, it seems like all the English history too that I read, there's just so much fear in every direction. Who are you going to stand? Go ahead, Larry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to jump in.
No, that's okay. I just found the passage that I think Adele was referring to. And it also, when Bonnie brought up her mother, nickname for Rebecca was Rabbit.
Rabbit. Yeah.
And it says the mother smiles and draws the cap off her graying hair, which she murmured, this is on 120, she mutters dismissively, you pay too much mind to gossip, Rabbit, which is just their nasty word for anyone who makes things happen, who moves the story along. A man like Hopkins, or like that dolt Richard Miller, will pray every day that God might strike his rivals down, or that a pretty young thing might look his way. And should it happen, he counts it a miracle, a marvel, proof of his standing among the righteous. All a supposed witch does, it seems to me, is everyone the courtesy of saying those prayers out loud and in company. The witch says her prayers, and it's the devil answers them. If the devil is truly so affable to a poor old wretch like Aunt Bess Clark, then perhaps he is worthy of worship indeed.
That's exactly right.
Part was so heartbreaking when
Oh,
the poor, decrepit old woman hobbled down to get a scrap of bread, and these righteous, pious Puritans would not feed her. You know, going against every commandment of the God they say they worship and honor, and
well, and think about it. When the Puritans left England and came over here, they were looking for religious freedom. And yet when they got there, they weren't going to give anyone else religious freedom. And it's horrendous, isn't it? You know, like you say, they just, like I always say, Puritans can't live with them.
Well, I also thought it was all the timing of your confession. If you wanted to live, you needed to confess, but it had to be at the right time, because if you confessed at the wrong time, it was like, well, to the gallows to you. And that's what kind of got Rebecca and her supposed friend, they timed their confessions just right so that they could live.
Hmm.
I thought that, I guess that's a true thing. So yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
speaking of Rebecca and her friend Judith, on page 51 and 52, 53, I have to say I was lost with that. I think it's when they do that sleepover and Rebecca's blindfolded and she has to feel a cabbage and draw it or something.
Mhm.
I don't understand what's going on there. Do you know what I'm, page 52?
Yeah, 51 with the cabbage.
Yeah.
And put a flat side of a blade. Oh yeah.
think
Between
it's
your
like-
legs.
I
Yeah.
think like when teenagers get together, and I think because she had the hots for the Eads character, and so her friend was kind of trying to get her to draw his image, maybe, or so. I mean, it sounds like a teenage, you know, like when they look in the mirror and they say things, and they, you know, so it's like drawing this to make it happen because she was interested in Eads, like she had the hots for him. So
Well,
I
I
think
tell you what-
her girlfriend was like trying to get her to admit it by like drawing him or something, and that would be, I don't know what the cabbage thing was, but I guess
Well,
it would be like
it's
looking in a
funny
mirror.
it's funny you should bring that up. I started the book Great Circle, and there's some, you know, at the very beginning of it, the little girl gets in trouble because the nanny thinks that she's asking a little boy to draw her cabbage. And she goes, you know, he ask you to draw his carrot? So I don't know whether it's cabbage for, you know, her labia or for her female parts. I don't know whether that was something that I'd never heard of before, the whole
Well,
cabbage thing.
Yeah, well, at the bottom of 52, the last sentence there, it says, like a hand reaching for my throat. There's a metallic taste in my mouth now, like the taste of blood. I don't know if she bit her own tongue. I don't know. I just like, what is going on there?
Yeah,
It
that
was
is
a harder period. I don't know.
you go to a sleepover and you play with the Ouija board, or you do the light as a feather game,
Oh, yeah.
scare yourself into thinking something has happened.
Yeah.
Probably so. Probably so.
I was confused. I was kind of confused about the part where her mother talks about throwing her into the fire or something. I don't remember where it was at, but
It's page 68.
68. Did that really happen, or was that? I'm just like,
I thought that was postpartum depression.
is it? Oh, you think that's what it was? Okay, yeah. That makes
I
sense.
think we now know the
Oh,
names
that could be, yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
better, and know what postpartum
Oh,
depression is,
that's right.
traumatic brain injury, or
Right, yeah. So I could, see how confused people would be when they don't know or don't have explanations for things. They were trying to come up with these explanations.
Yeah.
Or it could just be being a new mother and just being
Yeah.
completely exhausted and
Right.
sleep deprived. And
Oh, for sure.
So if Manningtree had one good psychiatrist, they could have avoided the whole thing.
Good one, Larry.
Because everybody in this book needed a psychiatrist, was my takeaway. Where is there a character that was like mentally healthy in the book? I guess that was one of my frustrations. Like, if Rebecca was going to do this fake confession, she should have done it a year earlier instead of what was all that suffering for? I thought, okay, she's trying to be like Sir Thomas More and be a man for all seasons and sacrifice for herself. But then, she became the star witness in killing all these old women. And it just, I don't know, that, I guess to me, that's one of the flaws of the book is, okay, she's taken us through the muck, but it's kind of obvious. I don't know. Most of the books that we've read in this book club, I feel like have taken us to another level or given us new perspective. And I kept waiting for that to happen in this book. And I don't feel like we ever got there.
I don't know if you're in that situation, how strong is your sense of self-preservation? Do you turn your back on everybody and save yourself? Is that?
I'm not condemning her for what she did. I'm just saying she should have done it sooner. And I guess we're all supposed to be happy when she murders Hopkins, but it's like, to me, it was like, okay, you're kind of sinking to his level now, that the ends justify the means. And her life wasn't so bad when she was, Hopkins' little pet there.
But she also did a good thing at the very end by adding her weight to the little old lady so that she would die quicker. I know it's warped, but she did it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, wasn't it interesting at the beginning of the book? I'm remembering where Rebecca is talking about wanting to stuff a rat in her mother's mouth, to stuff all these things and just kill her mother, right? That was, when the book started out like that, and I thought, what the heck? And then you get a sense of her mom really not being too kind to her, I think, throughout the book, or at least as far as I am. But then when her mother, right before her mother gets arrested, her mother starts to try and save her. So you see movement back and forth with different people, but I don't know.
No, Bonnie, I think you're underselling it. The mother was mommy dearest until they were arrested and faced with death. It took the threat of death and arrest for her to stop treating Rebecca like a doormat. I mean, that's why her self-image and self-worth was so bad. And then the men just made it worse after John Eads had her way with her. She's yelling after him, "Do you hear me? They say when the devil is called, he comes. Well, a fine mess you have got me in, sir. I hope it amuses you. A pauper, a witch, and now a whore." And I just thought that was a nice call out to Laurel and Hardy. It's another fine mess you've got me in. But I mean, at least a whore gets paid. I don't know there was no transaction going on there.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, and he really did testify against her.
Right.
And what he said is she had Congress with the devil himself. And so I was thinking, well, maybe he's calling himself the devil. Maybe that's the Congress he is referring to. But,
he did seem to be one of the few characters with a conscience, but it didn't do her any good. his conscience made him help Hopkins and testify against her.
Okay. Does anybody have anything else about this book?
Oh, I'm going to say one more thing. To me, the best line in what I've read so far is page 126. And in it, it says, next, the portly Mr. Stern, wearing his fine furred riding cloak and his wide grin of money. His wide grin of money. That's like a country western song right there. Wide grin of money.
Oh yeah, there, yeah. Yeah. Huh. I can't wait to finish it.
Yeah, well,
I will definitely finish it because I mean, the first page, there were words in there I had never heard before, and talking about slatternly. And then I'm thinking, it sounds like slovenly. Well, it turned out it was slovenly, basically. But to call somebody a slattern, like, okay, what, you're a slob, I guess. So I'm thinking, God, we simplified language a lot over here, didn't we?
Yeah.
From the old days. Only one syllable can do the job really, really well.
Winning next time I play Scrabble, because this book had a lot
Oh
of
yeah. That's good. I like that.
many witchy books out right now. So if you are into the witchy thing, you're in luck because there are many to choose from. Okay,
Oh, good.
I'm going to make a really broad segue here. Has anybody read Olive Kitteridge by Elizabeth Strout? Yeah, one of my all-time favorite books.
What's
Yeah.
it called again?
Olive Kitteridge.
Oh,
Strout.
no, I haven't read that.
I'm sorry, Nancy, what is it again?
Olive Kitteridge.
Olive?
Yep.
Elizabeth Strout.
It's a great book.
Yeah.
It's a good book.
And I'm going to say something. I'm going to say that Olive Kitteridge has a little bit of the Feldham West in her.
Yes, yes, yes.
She is not a lovey mother. She's not a touchy-feely kind of woman. She's harsh. She says what she thinks. She holds people to an incredibly high standard, and she's very judgmental. But I adore her. I love that book. Such an amazing book.
Olive Kitteridge.
Okay.
But Nancy, you just hit on something important. Even though Olive has bad qualities, you empathize and sympathize with her. I never liked the mother in this book.
Well,
Oh.
think about it some more, Larry, because I think that Olive and the Beldam have some similarities.
Yeah.
Because she did, in the end, she did do what she could to save her child.
Right.
Okay. That's a long ways to say.
Well, who played Olive in the movie?
Oh, that fabulous woman. Who's
Frances McDormand.
There you go. Yeah.
Oh,
I've never seen the movie. I didn't know there was a movie.
me either.
It's good, not as good as the book.
Oh, the book is great.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Anyway.
check out the book.
Blah, blah, blah.
And this is my way of leading us into our November selection, which is going to be Lucy by the Street. Lucy by the Sea by Elizabeth Strout,
Okay.
also the author of Olive Kitteridge. This is a different cast of characters. This is the fourth in this Lucy Barton series, though. You don't have to have read the Lucy Bartons to know what's going on in this one. I mean, it wouldn't hurt because they're fabulous. Elizabeth Strout's just an amazing writer. And the Lucy Barton series is wonderful. But this one happens during early in the pandemic is when this takes place. And it takes place in the same area as Olive Kitteridge. Now, I haven't finished this yet, so I'm hoping somehow Olive is going to show up in this book because I just adore her. So we're going to do this book on,
What's the
I
date?
would have written this down, November 16th. So Lucy by the Sea, Elizabeth Strout.
Cool.
And the first one is called My Name is Lucy Barton. And Laura Linney turned it into a one-woman show on Broadway.
Really? Oh.
Yes. So it's a wonderful story too. Okay. So then in December, let's meet on the 14th. I know that's a week earlier than we normally would, but I think like the 21st is getting us too close to Christmas. And since we're going to talk about our favorites anyway, you don't have a reading assignment. So other than to talk about one of your favorite books of 2022.
I'm sorry, what date? December 14th?
Yes, please.
Okay.
And then in January, it will be the 18th. I believe that Wednesday is the 18th. And that's So Long, See You Tomorrow by William Maxwell. So January will be our classic month again. And that's what we have chosen. Doesn't it seem like we just read Persuasion?
Mhm.
And now we're back up to our classic month again? Oh, this year went fast.
Yeah, totally,
So
totally.
Who's
So
the
Nancy,
one-
December, we're just sharing any favorite book
yep, just
on December 14th. And then January 18th is the Maxwell book.
So Long, See You Tomorrow.
So is it So Long, See You Tomorrow? Is that what you said? Oh, okay.
Have you read
by- Who's the author?
William Maxwell?
Okay, William Maxwell.
Yep, that's a favorite of James's, so he's excited for you all to read that one. That's a Midwest book.
Well, I went to high school with James and junior high. I met him. He was in my science class in junior high. That's when I met him.
Wow.
And I've seen him at one of our reunions. We just had another one recently. He wasn't at that one, but I think at our 40th or 50th, I'm not sure which one.
Bring your
So-
book club
Yeah.
next.
I will. And I will figure out why this stupid camera doesn't work on Zoom. Honestly, I have issues, but I thought I had them fixed and apparently not. But I will definitely do that. Oh. Oh.
Okay, so to wrap it up, this wasn't everybody's favorite by any means,
I
but
like it.
thanks all for giving it a shot, and it's something different we haven't done before. Sometimes things work, like y'all like the YA book, and sometimes they don't, and we're never going to get everybody that likes every book every time. So what would be the fun in that? What would we talk about?
Right.
If we all said yes, I liked it, that'd be the end of our conversation. Right?
That's true.
Oh.
Hey,
Okay.
Kath,
So
Thanks,
just-
thanks
yeah,
for the
Kath-
conversation. It was really good, Nancy.
I
You did a good
really
job.
enjoyed this a lot.
Thank you.
Kathy,
Nice meeting you, and I'm sorry I was invisible.
well,
Next month, Kathy, you
So
better
Next
be
month.
here.
I'll be there, and it will work. If I have to, I don't know. I'll move Zoom to my
You-
other computer.
You need to cast a spell so that you lose your cloak
Oh,
of invincibility.
I
Then we'll be
completely,
able to see you.
I forgot. Maybe it's one of you guys though that put a spell on that square
Mary,
that's blank.
Well, James is the only one not here, so just saying.
I have one.
Aha.
I have one more thought on the book.
Okay.
When they were surprised when Rebecca said she can read and write some as well, and then indeed sighs the Mariner, a sad prognostic of the consequences attendant on female literacy, I hear. So it was like, we never should have let the women read. It was the reading that made them witches. I was like, oh my God, I couldn't. That was just the killer. That yes, we shouldn't
Well,
allow the women to read. That's
There is
really
talk
the,
about- we didn't even
that's
talk
the
about those
solution.
rituals.
There is a current politician who has actually come out publicly and said women should never have been given the vote.
Oh God.
I can't remember his name now.
Ah,
I think I've blocked it out of my mind.
Well, that's the logical step if you don't have control of your body. I think we need to go back to white male landowners. That worked so well when the country was founded.
Yeah, originalism. Let's go back to
Yeah,
originalism.
let's do, yeah, let's do that.
Well, there is one sentence where it's like she's so glad that she's left because Christian men are selling Christian men to other Christian men.
Man,
Oh, that was a good one, yes.
That was a
Yeah.
good line. No hypocrisy there.
There's no
No.
hypocrisy there.
I would just like to say on behalf of the male race, we are not all terrible.
That's true.
That is very
But
true.
that-
Larry.
the portrait in this book was pretty
Pretty
damning.
bad.
I know.
You all are good. Take care. Have a good evening.
All right, thanks,
Enjoy
everybody.
this. Nice
Bye.
meeting you
This was fun.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Everyone.
Bye.